Hello, it's Sammy Kings again, and in today's tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you how to do MySQL server replication. See you right after the intro. Thank you. Hello, welcome back. Now, I'm actually going to be installing my SQL Server. But first, let's run sudo apt update to actually update our package. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome, and if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. Now, I appreciate you if you actually hit the subscribe button and turn on notification bell, and also give this video a like, because I actually put in a ton of work to kind of make this explanatory video. All right, so let's get back to it. So we've successfully we've successfully updated our our machine. Now let's just see the version of MySQL that is currently on our machine. So to do that, I can just do app list, then I can pipe this to grep, and what am I just going to be looking for? Let's search for MySQL server. All right. So on my machine here, if you look closely, you could see here that I have MySQL Server version 8, but I want to now, if I actually come in here and do something like sudo sudo install ny MySQL Server, then what's actually going to happen is that I'm going to be installing this particular version, but I don't want to do that now. I let's say in this particular case you actually want to install another version, let's say version 5.7 or whatever. Now the way you're going to do that is first by actually copying um, the PGB key. Okay, so but if you really want to install MySQL Server 8.0, you could just actually do you could just actually do this, and then you click on enter. You're just going to install that version and you can proceed. But for me, I don't want to use that. I actually want to install MySQL 5.7. Now, for me to do that, I actually wrote down a step-by-step procedure on how you could actually go about it on my GitHub project README. So I'm just going to be opening that up, coming down here. You could just go, yeah. Say installation guide for MySQL 5.7. Now, the first thing you should do is to actually first go to this site dev.mysql.com. So I'm just going to open this in a new tab. Now let it load up. Now on this thing, it says and copy the PGB public key just immediately under the notice section to your clipboard. So this is what I was actually referring to, just immediately after the note session. So this is the PGB key you have to copy. Now you could highlight everything here, or you could just click on this icon here to copy to your clipboard. Then basically, then just go to your terminal. I'm just going to clear this, and then just open a file. Just open a file with any name, but the most important thing is that the extension of the file should be .k. So let's just say mysql v v5.7 dot key. So let's say this is my file. Then I'm just going to paste it in there. So then I'm going to save and exit. So now let's go back to our guide. Now it says create a new file in your terminal with a .key extension and paste the PGP pub key there. We've actually done that. Then we should do this. We should then do this. Now if we do this, we should see OK being displayed to our screen. So let's quickly go there and actually do that. So sorry. So what we're actually doing here is actually what? So we are adding the apt. So we're actually adding this key to our apt. So it is actually sorry. So it's apt key add. Then and the name of our file is actually mysql 5.7.key. So what I'm actually saying is the fact that I'm actually adding this key to my application, my apt package. That's what I'm actually just doing. So I'm just click on enter, as you can see, means that this particular guy here is successful. Now, since this key has been added to our application package manager, which is basically apt, then I will need to then update this machine so that this new key can then be read from. Okay, so I'll just do sudo apt updates. All right, so it's done. Now that it's done, if I'm then I will need to open the cache policy for MySQL. So let me spell that. Cache policy for mysql-server. Oh, sorry, forgot about this guy. Okay. Okay, so I missed a step. So I will have to actually add this this particular guy here. I actually need to add this particular URL to my source list. My sources dot list directory. So I could just copy it before we run this. Just going to copy it and paste this here. Then I'm going to click on enter. Oh, sorry, I didn't do that correctly. I didn't do that correctly. So just copy. Okay, so let's confirm if verify if everything is okay. Okay, yeah, everything is okay, cool. Now that I've actually added this URL link to my sources the list directory, I will have to then update. Okay, now that I've updated it, now following this this guide, I will need to check my apt cache policy for this MySQL server to then see if MySQL version 5.7 it's now available for me to install. So let me clear this. So what I'm actually going to do is sudo apt cache policy, then it's MySQL server. That's actually what we just need to actually type, and then you can see it says installed. No, it's not installed, but now you could see I have version 5.7.41. Mind you, I will still need to do the same thing on my web web 02 machine. So now if I now want to install, I'm basically just going to install it the normal way you actually install, but then I would have to now specify the actual version I want. Now you could just type it out, or you could just come here and then just copy this, and then just copy this, and there we go. We are actually installing MySQL. Okay, so now it's actually prompting us to enter in our root password. Now please you should note this, because this is what you're actually going to use to log into MySQL server. Okay, and you should know that the root user is actually the number one user, the ID1. Okay, so let me just type in my password. Okay, so now let's just wait. All right. Well, don't know why it's taking this much time. All right, so it's done. Now it's done. Now the next thing I actually want to do is to check if my SQL server is actually running. Now to do this, the sudo service mysql status. Okay, so my SQL is running, so I can log into my SQL. Now to log into my SQL, you just have to use the mysql command. Then U option here is basically signifying the user you want to log in as. So I want to log in as root. Then the dash p here is the password. Now you could actually put in your password here. Actually put in your password, and then you click on enter. Now this is actually not going to work because this is not the password. But if I'm actually going to do this, now you can see that this my password is actually logged by the system. You can see it's actually logged by the system. But if I'm now going to put in the correct password to log in, I'm in on MySQL. Now if I exit, now if I repeat this, you see it's not logged on my history tab here. So that I have that's one way to actually secure your password. Just going to clear this. Okay, so now that we've actually installed MySQL and we've successfully logged in and out. So now let's proceed to actually doing the task. So The very first task they're saying that you should actually create a user and you should grant privileges. You should actually create a user called ubuntu user and you should grant this replication client to this particular user. So you actually to so first thing we have to do is to actually log into MySQL, or you could actually write it as a script, then pass it to MySQL for it to run. Okay, but let's just log in. Let me just write it as a script. So let me just write this as a script. Let me write this as a script instead. So let's just say create grant priv.sql. Okay. Okay, so what we're actually going to do, let's just what are we doing? What's the password? This is the password. Actually, ubuntu user. Let me put this in quotes. So okay. So what I'm actually going to use the create syntax, but in this case, I'm just actually going to use instead of the create database to give, then you should know that you could just put our DB name here. Now this is actually going to create a database, but I don't want to create a database. In this case, I want to actually create a user. So I'm just going to say create user. Now the name of the user is this. Let me just type it out. Let me not be lazy. Ubuntu user, then add localhost, or you could actually put your machine IP address here. But for the sake of this particular project, let's leave it at localhost because this is actually the instruction that was actually given. So I'm just going to say create user, then this is the user. Now this user will definitely need a password. Now if I didn't spell this correctly, yeah, now if I don't put in this identified if I don't put in this identified line here, and let's say I just kind of run this, and let's just I just kind of run this particular script, this user is actually going to be created, but then um it doesn't, he or she doesn't have any password. Now you can see, now for you to actually log in, you will need two credentials, your username and then your password. See, so without a password, you see that you will not be able to log in, right? So let's just put in the password. Let's say identified by, then I think this one I will have to copy. I will have to copy. Oh, I even have it here. Just copy it. Okay, so like then we actually use a semicolon to actually signify the end. Now that I have actually created this particular user, and the next thing I want to actually do is grant this user some privilege, right? So the syntax is actually grants then your privilege. So what I want to grant this particular user actually replication client. That's actually what I want to actually grant this particular user. So I'm granting replication client to on on all databases, on all data and tables. So this is the meaning of this particular line here. That's the meaning here. All database and all tables. Okay. So let's proceed. Okay, so let's proceed. So I'm going to replication clients on all database and all tables is to now the user just okay. I think I have to just copy it from here. Just copy it from here. Oh, I don't know what's happening. Finding it difficult to copy. So I'm going to replication client on all database to this particular user. Then I'm going to put my semicolon to actually end that, and like so we actually done. So what I would just have to do now is I'll cut the content of this particular file. Now if I cut out the content, this is what is actually displayed, right? So let me just clear. So I'm going to cut out this content, but then I'm going to pipe this to my SQL, then login as root, then P for my password. Then I'm going to enter my password. Now, like so, we've actually executed this. Now, if I actually log in on my SQL, actually log into my SQL. Now you can see now I actually used another way. Instead of me joining its uroot, I actually gave a space, and it is still going to work. Okay, now if I'm actually going to do select user select user from, let me just use the normal syntax from user. Now you can see I have ubuntu user here. So you see that that particular query was actually successful. Okay. All right. So let's exit. I think I'll just be using script to kind of do this. But you can actually log into your MySQL console and then do everything from the console. But I think I will just have to use script to just do it. Okay, so now that we've actually created the user, now the next thing for us is to actually what create database create a database, then create a table, then we should add some data into the table. Now, I would like to point out the fact that we should understand what is a database, what is a table, what is a column, and then what is a row. Now, you should actually look your database like something like an Excel spreadsheet. So, now, before you can actually create uh, a table, the very first thing you must do, you have to create a database. Now, a database can have minimum one to infinity tables, but a database should have minimum one table. Now, you can actually have an empty database, no offense, but at least minimum one table should just be there. Okay, so to actually create a database, then we actually use the create syntax, then database, then our name of the database. Let's see what is the I can't remember the name of the database that they actually specified for us to use, but let me just use students. Let me use students, or no, let me just use school. Let me use school as my database. Okay, now I've created a database. Now I'll like to actually create a table. Now for me to actually create a table, I'll have to kind of use that database so that the console will know that it's on this particular database that I actually want to create a table. But then something just dropped off my head. I've not actually tried it. Now since I can actually do select since I can actually do select then the column, let's still say the user column, then I can actually just do from the database, which is my SQL, and the table, which is user, and it's actually going to return. Can I also create table? Can I also create table in I've not actually tried it, but let's just see, because the way I actually know how to do this is you have to then use the database before you can create a table. But let's say I don't want to use this database now. I just want to create a table inside this database. So let's see if it's actually going to give us error. So let's say the name of my table. First, let's show our database. So show data basis. So I can say school there. So I'm just going to say create table school. Then we call this student. Then call the then for you to actually create create a table, you will need to actually add columns to this particular table, right? Okay, so then I'm just going to do this. So let's just say ID, student ID, and then the data type is going to be an int. Then the name should be voucher. Then the size should be, let's just say 25. Now this size is actually including white space. So let's say the maximum name should be 25 characters. Then I will still need the class. So data type is actually still going to be virtual. Now this should be just 12. All right, so okay, I'm done with that. So let's see if it will work. Wow, it actually did work. So all right, that's cool. So instead of you, because what um what you actually need to do before was to do something like use a particular database. In this case, it is school. Then when you have used it, then you now like do create table. This, so you can see I have actually skipped two lines. So I've actually saved time and keystrokes. Alright, so we all in. So now that we've actually created a table, now this table is actually empty. Okay, so now let's actually add data or add rows. The data are actually going to be in rows on this particular table, which is student table. So let's just say I want, then the syntax is actually to insert and to try and follow the SQL syntax. Insert into insert into come on. Okay, sorry, we actually on this we've actually done this part. We're actually on this line here. Sorry, I kind of forgot about that. So I'm just saying insert into, now the name of the sorry, now the name of the table you actually want to insert. So this is school, insert into school dot student. Now you can actually pass in the colon. Yeah, like let's say id then name and class, or you could just scatter them like name, id, then class, and then you come here and you say values, and then you pass in the values, and then you pass in the values. But sorry, and then you pass in the values according to the way you actually specify them here. That is, in here the values, that means your name, which is a string, is going to be here. Then the id, let's say the id is 2, and then the class, let's say primary 2. You're actually going to pass it according to the way you actually specified it on these columns here. But let's say you didn't do that. Now let's say you didn't do that, you could actually do this. Now if you are doing this, you have to explicitly pass in the values according to the way the column was actually created. So the first column for me here was actually my id, which is actually going to be an integer. So let's just say the first person, which is 1. Now the name is a string. Let's call this Leon Bailey. Then let's say classes primary 4. All right, so you can see now that because I didn't actually put the colons, I will have to pass it according to the way it was actually created. Then I'll just have to put my semicolon to end that. Now you can see my syntax is correct. And just change this to id to 2, the id to 2. Then the name should be Some kings. Let's say 5. And yep, now as you can see, we have this. Now, if you notice, when we are actually creating our table, I didn't actually specify a primary key, a primary and a foreign key. Well, uh, for the purpose of this particular project, you could actually specify them, but it doesn't really matter. But on a real life, on a real world, or in a practical case, it is very important that you actually specify your primary key. And your primary key is something that is actually going to stay unique. Now, this is the dangers when you don't actually pass in the the primary key. Now, I could still repeat the same statement. But first, let me do let me just select all from screw. Now you can see this is my database. Now, if I'm going to repeat this here, if I'm going to repeat this here, it's actually still going to add it to the table. Now you can see, though it's still the same data, but because I didn't actually add the primary key there. Now you can see that's the reason why this is happening on my database, and you won't really want that because you now kind of have duplicate records. Okay, to to actually remove this, you could just use the delete syntax. That's, you could actually use the delete syntax to actually do that. But let's just, for the sake of, let's just leave it and then let's continue. So we've actually created a database. We've created table, then we've added data. Okay, so the next step is to actually create another user another user. Now, in this case, we're actually going to create a replica user, and then we're then going to grant replication slave on to this particular user. Okay, now I also want to point out the fact that depending on the version of MySQL you're using, your syntax is actually going to be different. This is one thing I actually came to understand while doing this particular project. So, okay, so let's proceed to actually creating a replica user. So let's just say create user. Let this be user replica at. Now you could still do local hosts. You can still do local. Okay, sorry, it is actually replica user. Now you can actually still do local host here, and it's actually going to work because local host is just like a domain that basically saying your this particular machine, which is 127.0.0.1. You can actually pass in that, but we are actually asked to kind of pass this here. Now, what this is actually saying is all IP address that is available on this particular machine, including 127.0.0.1. Now, you should know that your 127.0.0.1 is your local is your local IP address. Now, you also have your normal IP address of which you actually use to accept traffic from the outside world. So this percent here is basically saying all IP address available on this particular machine, including IPv6. That's what we should take note of. So I'm saying create user. This then should be identified with. So let's give this particular user, let's say the password should be password should be Sammy. Now if you're actually going to do if you're actually going to do this Sammy 23. And if you're actually going to now this particular credential, you should take note of it because you will actually need it in the tail end to on your slave when configuring your slave MySQL server. You will actually need these credentials here. Okay, so oh, all right. I'm just going to repeat that. Create user. Create user replica user at and then okay. Oh, let's say I didn't. Oh, great. So create user replica user identified. Okay, so let me check now if all is well. Okay, yep. Alright, so now I have actually created this user, and so the next is to actually grant this particular user the privilege. Now the syntax is actually grant, then what privilege now? So replication. I'm going to grant a replication slave on. I could still use lowercase, but I'm trying my possible best to actually stick the on the syntax when using the MySQL console, because most of the time I actually do my SQL query via scripts. So on grant replication on all database and all table. So replica. Okay. Then I'm just going to put this. Okay. So most now sometimes it's advised you should actually do this, which is flush privileges. You actually do this most times. Actually advisable you actually do this now. What this particular line is actually doing is kind of delete all cache from that might has resulted from this privilege that you've actually done. That's basically what it's actually doing. But I don't know, sometimes I do forget doing this, and to this point I've not really seen any adverse effect. Sometimes I still remember, sometimes I don't, but it's still worth pointing this out to your. Okay, so I have actually created this particular user, and then I've granted this particular replication privilege to this particular user. So the next thing we have to do is to then go to our MySQL config file to actually configure MySQL. Now we're actually using this particular machine, which is Web 1, as our master. Okay, so just going to exit from here, and then this is where, okay, I forgot to actually show you this, but so this is where we are currently now. We are actually going to navigate to this particular directory. There are actually two. You could decide to use this, or you could decide to use another, but I prefer using this. It is just me. I just prefer using this particular file in this particular directory. Now you could actually use your my.cnf. You can actually create, if it's not existing, you can actually create a file called my.cnf, and then you could just use it, so it will be etc mysql my my.cnf, but I prefer using this particular file here. So I'm just going to do sudo vi, then okay guys, I kind of actually paused the video so that I can actually log into Web 2, because I'm actually still, so you see, I've actually logged into Web 2, because we actually need to still do the same thing we actually did on Web 1, Web 2. So, and there were some sensitive details like the machine IP address, and other things I really don't want to expose. So that's the reason why I actually paused the video to log into Web 2. Right, I do apologize for that. So okay, so let's continue. So we're actually still going to be going to this directory, this particular file in this directory, and we're actually going to be making some edits. Okay, so that should be for Web 1. So I think I still have that. Yes. All right. So cool. So so okay. So now in this particular, or in some videos, they will tell you to uncomment this bind address. If you don't have the bind address commented, if you don't have the bind address commented, you should you should uh should leave it that way. Sorry. Oh, right. If you have the bind address commented, you should leave it that way. But if you don't have the bind address commented, you should actually comment it out. Okay, but to some videos, they'll kind of tell you that on this bind address, you should actually put your this particular machine public IP address. But um as per the requirements of this particular video, we are asked to comment out the bind address. So now the next thing we will have to do is to then put in our server ID directive. Now you should know that the server ID ought to be unique across all master slave machine. It ought to be unique. If the server IDs are same, there's going to be conflict. That's what I should actually want to point out. Okay, now that we've actually set that out, now the next thing we will actually need to do is to actually set the file for our binary files. So this is actually logged in. Then it's actually going to be on our var log mysql. Then the name of our file, let's just call it mysql bin log.log. You could actually call yours any name, but please note that it should be on your var log mysql directory. Now this last part is just the name of the file, your binary log file. All right, so this is the location of the binary log file, of which are all our slave or all our client uh, or all our clients database is actually going to be pulling the binary log file and reading from it to actually execute to make changes to their own corresponding database. At this point, also, I would like us to actually go and read more about master slave replication on MySQL. Okay, so now that we've actually specified the file name and the directory for the binary log file, we still need to specify the name of the database that we actually want. Sorry, that we actually want. That we actually want to do this on, that we actually want to replicate. Okay, so now the directive is actually log, sorry, it's actually being log binary log do db, then you provide the name. I've forgotten the name of the particular database, but let's just say in this one we actually want to replicate the school database. Now if you have more than one database you actually want to replicate, then you could continue and do bin log do db and pass in the second database. Let's say it is mysql database, and like so. That's if you have more than one databases to replicate. Okay, so basically these are all what we actually need to actually get started with our master configuration. Now please know that this web one is actually our master. So I'm just going to save. Okay. Okay. So now that we've actually made that, we actually need to use sudo. Actually need to restart MySQL. Okay. All right. So MySQL is actually restarted. So let me log into MySQL. Okay. So now that I've actually logged in on MySQL, now if you are just logging in on MySQL, by default all databases are closed, all tables are closed. But let's say you've actually you were working on MySQL console. That okay, that is when you actually need to do this step. But if you just logged in, if you just logged in, all databases and tables are actually closed, because this here is actually going to close or open tables, open databases and tables. That's what this is actually going to do. So if you're just logging in, by default, those tables are actually closed. You could just go here and then do show master status. So I'm just going to come here and do show master status. Now I want you to actually now look at this. You see now the name here differs, mysql-bin, which actually tallies to what I actually specified here. But for me, but for this particular tutorial now, you see it is mysql-bin log 002. All right. So one thing you have to note is the name of the file and the position. It is very, very important. The name of the file and the position. So this is it for your master configuration. Now we have to move to the slave. Now we actually have to move to the slave. So the first thing I'll do here is to repeat the same process by going to this place, copying this. I think I will just have to pause this and just run through the installation, since we actually did that in web 1. I'll just have to pause this then run through it, so we'll not have to take much time because it's already getting too long. All right. Okay, so my SQL server has successfully been installed on web 2. Now you can see this is what I did on it. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. All right, so this is what we actually need to take note of. So I'm just going to bring on my notepad so I can copy this to my notepad. So I have to copy it and paste on my notepad. Okay, so this is our file, and this is the position. Okay, so now what? So I think that's all. You could still leave this particular terminal open and then you log into another terminal to continue to the next step, but I don't really like too much terminals open, so I'm just going to exit from this. This here is basically so you can actually exit from here and actually come back in, so long you don't make any change to this particular database that you are actually going to replicate, because it's at this point, like, it actually kind of created a marker at this particular point. So it's from there it actually starts going to replicate. So now if you alter this particular database and you've not done this next step, you might actually run into issues. So you could actually exit and relog in, so long you don't alter the particular database that you're planning to replicate. So I've exited from this. So what do I actually want to do? I have to actually export this, like, I have to export this database from my SQL server to this my machine. Then from my machine to this part to my web 2. Now from my machine to web 2. So I have to export this from my SQL server to this machine, from this machine to this machine, then from this machine to my SQL server. So now for me to actually do that, now one way you could do it is to do that via SCP, via secure copy. But for you to do a secure copy, you must actually have your SSH key set up. So um I will just quickly do that right here. So I'm just going to say SSH keygen. Now I want to just let the name of the file be, let it actually be stored here, and the name of the file should be SQL Server key, or let's just call this server key. Now if I actually want to put in a passphrase, I can decide to, but I don't want to put in a passphrase, so I'm just going to say no. Now it's created. Now I'll have to then copy the contents of this public key and place them in my authorized keys in this particular machine. I have to put them here. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's proceed. So now I'll just have to open. I just have to open the file. Then I'll just copy this. Then I'll just paste this. Then now the reason why I'm actually doing this because I don't actually have the root password. If I actually had the root password, I could just actually use SSH copy ID to actually just copy the public key from web 1 to web 2. But if I'm going to use that particular, it's actually going to ask me for the root user password, and I don't have access to it. So that's the reason why I just actually did this. Now that this is done, so let me just clear my screen. Now that that is done, so what I'll have to do, I'll have to export the tables, not the database now. I have to actually export the tables. So what I'll do now, okay, so what I'll do now is to use the MySQL dump, then the name of the database the name is school, then the location, if you want it to be on this your current directory, you could just put in the name you want, but if you want it to be on a particular directory and folder, you could pass in the absolute path. But for me, I just want to like save it on this particular directory. So the name I should use to save this, let me just call it, let me just use the same name, school.sql. Then it's going to actually ask me for password, then I'm going to put my password. Oh, sorry, I didn't actually spell that correctly. Now that should work perfectly. Good. Now if I'm actually going to do an ls, now you can see I have school. Now I will have to then I'll have to copy this particular SQL to this particular machine. To do that, I'll use scp my identity file, then the file I actually want to copy is school.sql to ubuntu at okay. Let me just okay, I will have to kind of review the IP address of this particular machine. Let me just pause this and just do it. On the second thought, well, let me just let this. Let me just put them. Then I can just do this to signify the users, this particular user home directory. Okay, so this is basically how I'm just going to copy this particular file, which is school.sql, to this particular to my web 2, and that should be, yeah, this is where we are. All right, so sorry, then click on yes. Okay, and then let's watch it do its thing. So you can see it's done. Now if I'm going to do ls, yeah, see I have school.sql. Okay, now I have it on this machine. I will then have to create a database on this particular machine and then import the tables to that particular database. Okay, so that's what I'll just have to do. So to do that, should I use a script to do this? Yeah, I think we should just use a script. So let's just say create import dot sql. Okay, so I'm creating a database. Okay, so I'm going to type this to my SQL. Okay, um let's wait, instead of us doing this, let's come back and edit this, and then let's actually do show. So if we actually let's just first of all show database first. Show databases first. So I'm going to be showing database, then create a database called school, and I'm going to be showing it so you can actually see the what is actually happening. Okay, so I'm just going to cut create, pipe this to my SQL. Now you can see I have this as show database, right? Now I have this. Now when I've created the database, now you can see school there. So now school is actually, that particular database is now actually created. Now for me to, so this is where we are. So now this is what you're actually going to do now. So for me to then import this particular database to my SQL server, I'm still using my SQL command. Then root. Sorry, the video is a little bit long, but I just have to explain it little by little so we could actually you can actually understand. Alright, so okay. So now we'll actually have to specify the database, which is school. Then we're actually going to import it, which is then we're actually going to import school.sql to this school database. And let's see if I got this syntax well. Yes, I did. Alright, so I'm just doing this. Okay, so if I'm going to write a script, I'm going to if I'm going to um change this, instead of show database should be show instead of show database should be show tables, show oh or instead of doing that, let's just say I want to select, let's see, select everything from school.student. Then I'll have to comment this. So I now that I've actually imported it, I now want to want to see the contents of it. Let's see if it was actually successful. So I'm going to rerun this. I'm just going to rerun this. Then pass my command. Oh, sorry. I think it's actually students, not students. I could actually see. Sorry. I could actually see it from. Oh, yeah, I think it's actually students. That is the name of our database, not students. Yeah, so you can see. So you can see that it was successfully imported. Okay, so now we'll have to, yeah, we're actually getting to the tail end of the video. So what's actually left here is to log into our replica and then do these configurations. Okay, so I'm just going to rush through it. I'm just going to rush through it. I'm not going to rush through it. So I'm just going to copy this. Then I'll comment this out. Then I'm just going to let me just copy this and paste it because I've actually explained this particular part previously, so I'm just going to copy it to make things faster. But then I will have to edit this to being log which is actually the name of our data log file that this replica client should actually go and actually pick. Now the DB and DB name is actually school. Okay. Oopsie, I have not added a server ID. Alright, so we can do sudo service mysql. Okay, so now we will then log in. Now we'll then log in and then do this particular last step. Okay, so this is sudo, sorry, mysql. So now I'm just going to come in to change master to just adjust this. Okay, this is a change master to master. Now the master host. Now this particular syntax that I'm actually using is according to MySQL version 5.7. If you're using MySQL version 8, the syntax is actually different. So master host now, the name of so source host name. Now the host name in this your particular file here is, I'm going to pause this to just copy and paste the IP address. Okay. Oopsie. Now we didn't do something correctly here, which is actually this part by adding a comma. Okay. So master user. So in this master user, we actually put in replication user, the replication username. So it's actually what replica user. Now master password. That is Sammy 2023. Now master log file. Log file is actually what this particular file here. This particular one. So I'm just going to copy. The the master log position. That's P. Is actually what's the 154. So that's just it. So that's the end here. And then you can see it's okay. So what would I just have to do is what? Start slave and put this. And like so, I am done with actually setting up my SQL server replication. Now, please, I would like you all to subscribe, share, like, and turn on the notification bell so that you consistently get updates anytime I actually post a video. Thank you for staying through the end. God bless you.